So, we're back with another episode of the AI Right podcast, and we're delighted to be joined by John and Chris, co-founders of Scottish-based health tech startup TileBio. John, Chris, welcome to the show. Nice to have you. How are you?
Great.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris. Yeah, great to be here.
Good. We're joined by Andy as well. So, Chris, John, as always, when we've got guests on the show, we give you guys a chance to introduce yourselves, your background.
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Christopher Walsh. I've got a background in computer science and AI. So started back there, seems a long time ago now, in 2014, doing my undergraduate degree in computer science at Heriot-Watt. And then from there, I went on to do a PhD in cancer sciences at the University of Glasgow at the CRUK. It was called then the Beatson Institute. It's now been rebranded to the CRUK Scotland Institute, and I've since been working on postdocs. We're working with Kay and John, my co-founders on the call, and David Chang, and we've been working on a variety of different deep learning projects over the years, and that's how we got together and formed TileBio, which we can talk about. But yeah, John, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I'm John LeCain. I'm a professor of molecular pathology at the University of Glasgow. I actually started out as a biochemist, an undergraduate degree in biochemistry, and then a PhD in RNA biochemistry. Then I went to medical school and trained as a histopathologist. And I was attracted to Glasgow about 5 or 6 years ago to start my second lab in my career. Honestly, I was largely attracted to Glasgow by the nascent AI image community that I've been working with ever since.
Amazing, very interesting. We can dive a bit deeper into that. You guys want to give the listeners then a bit of an overview of TileBio, Chris, how it was founded and the kind of backdrop to the story of the business?
Yeah, sure. So like I say, back when I was doing my undergrad, I guess where it started for me, why I wanted to do something that can have a real impact was during my undergraduate degree in my third year, I had stage 4 lymphoma. So I was diagnosed with that and had to take a year out and thought a lot about AI and what I could do with my skills to help. So thankfully recovered and came back and finished my degree. But that's what really, if you could go back and start again, I'd be a doctor, pathologist, something like that, someone that could actually make a difference. You're inspired by what you see and the amazing treatment I got at the NHS. So that's what drove me to go on and do a PhD in cancer sciences. I wanted to see how I could apply deep learning to that. So I was always looking for ways that I could, translate the technology, kind of amazing research that was going on there into the clinic. And like I say, met Kay, John and David during a variety of projects working together over the years, and they've got the same opinion, right? They want to produce something that has real impact for patients, and that's how TileBio got started in my eyes. What about you, John?
So I was attracted as an academic. I'd had some small collaborations with computer scientists in AI previously in my previous lab at a MRC research unit in Leicester. And it was early success on the research front that made it clear to us that this was something really important that we wanted to see become adopted rapidly into practice. And the only way to do that is through this commercialization. That's the way that transition went for me.
Are your other co-founders pathologists or computing scientists?
Yeah, so we have two other co-founders. So it's Dr. Kay Yuan. So he's a senior lecturer and was in computing science, now in MVLS. And he's an AI expert at the variety of different, applying AI to a variety of different cancer biology projects, computational biologist really. And then we've got Professor David Chang, who's a pancreatic cancer surgeon and clinical academic, and like John is a kind of expert in biomarker discovery.
Oh, so you're equally balanced. Because I was going to ask you, John, what it's like coming into the AI world as a pathologist, someone trained in medicine, immunology, etc. What's it like learning and kind of drinking the tech Kool-Aid over the past few years? What's that been like?
It's been incredibly exciting, I have to say. And as an academic clinician for a couple of decades now, and the work that we're doing with the self-supervised AI, I have to say, is pretty much the most exciting thing that I've been involved in. Working with computer scientists and mathematicians is fascinating and a real challenge, a really enjoyable challenge. It's amazing how even when you work with people all the time, most of the hard work, it feels, that we do is making ourselves understood in each other's language and being willing to go beyond your comfort zone and just grasp the shape of what the other person is thinking is what makes all the difference, I think. That's what we really encourage in our early career researchers.
I love it. It's brilliant. I really the kind of interdisciplinary nature of projects like this is really interesting. Chris, just quick note on the same idea, kind of it sounds like you were kind of in your journey going into the biological world, if I could call it that, sort of more intentionally, maybe a bit earlier in your journey, but like what's your view of that? What's it kind of like coming at this from a computing angle, working on biology problems?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons why I kind of love this as well, is that it opened up a whole new world to me, right? So until I did my PhD, I hadn't done any biology since, high school biology basically. So it was a whole new field to learn, and a really fascinating one. If you maybe never looked at pathology image, but it's like Google Maps, right? You can get a high level neighborhood overview or zoom right into the cell level, and it literally is a different world. And yeah, working with pathologists like John, they help, kind of uncover the mystery of that world is fascinating to me.
Well, Chris, when we've done a bit of an intro before the podcast, obviously you talked me through the journey of when a patient goes in for diagnosis or goes through the biopsy. Do you want to take us through that journey for somebody that's maybe experienced this, and where your product comes into that, or where it's intended to support that process?
Yeah. So one of the big things we were trying to solve is the pathologist shortage, essentially, right? So only 3% of labs in the UK have enough pathologists. So right now, when a patient comes in, they'll have they'll have a biopsy, or if they have a surgical resection, and that sample needs to be analysed, and that all runs through pathologists. So what has to happen is that tissue gets sectioned and stained and put on a glass slide, and then digitally imaged in a digital lab anyway, and that has to go through a pathologist for the patient to get their diagnosis, so they can begin their treatment. So currently there's a massive backlog there, and with self-supervised AI, we can help uncover the patients that have cancer much sooner, to get them their treatment much sooner and improve their outcome. So that really is what Tile's aiming to do in the long run. We want to, because we can train using self-supervised AI, we want to be able to do clinical triage across all cancers, really all human disease, to get those patients treatment sooner. That's the overall idea. And
then from a pathologist perspective, obviously there's a shortage of pathologists, as you mentioned. How much would technology like this support their work? Well, it's not obviously there to replace them, but support them, I would assume.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of fear in the pathology community, to be honest, which I think is misplaced. I think that we are drowning in work, and we really need powerful tools which can help us to do the job. I know of many diagnostic departments which have got piles of glass slides waiting to be looked at, and for all we know, there are one or two urgent cases in there which face a serious delay in diagnosis. So the sort of system we're talking about that can scrutinise every glass slide as it's produced by the lab and flag up those which require immediate attention would save a great deal of time and money and human suffering at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, this whole bit. You mentioned, John, about the fear, right? And we've spoken about this a lot of times, and I've kind of got a bit of a reputation as an eye roller when I hear about, the AI hype, even though I work in AI. What would you maybe say to the, you were saying there about the pathology community or other biologists, and maybe one for you, Chris, to comment as well. I'm just thinking of things like, Jeff Hinton in 2016, he predicted that AI would do the job of all radiologists in the next 2 years or something. And as you say, all that's happened is there is a massive shortage of radiologists, and he would make the same prediction about pathologists and other bioprofessionals, right? And I always attribute that to the hubris of people who don't work in that field. It's easy to assume you will automate another one's job when you don't actually understand what goes into the job. So what do you think the future of an AI-supported medical professional looks like? Like, what do you think? So even things like what skills should medical professionals be thinking about in the future? Because you guys are right at the coalface, right? You know about this more than anyone. So what would you say to young medical professionals out there about AI and the opportunities it brings?
So what I say to trainee pathologists is that they've got to be involved in this process. Right? If they're going to remain skilled and relevant and useful, they've got to be a part of this. It's both exciting and inevitable.
Yep. So what I would say is exactly what you said. Predictions were made in the past about us replacing all pathologists, replacing all radiologists, and I really don't think that's the right way to go. Right? Like, you want to use AI to empower humans, in my mind, right? And we don't want to make massive strides at once. We want to make real products that'll have value, right? And just make pathologists' lives better and help be a backstop, basically, right? The best expert can have a bad day, and that's where I think AI can really come in, right? It can help look for subtle edge cases, single cell out of millions that could be cancerous. There's lots of cases where AI can provide that backstop, right, and help focus what a human's looking at, basically, and help them rather than replace them. That's my mind about how these that's my opinion, I guess, about how these technologies are best used.
That's absolutely right. I think that just as in all the areas where AI is taking on some of the professional burden from a niche area of expertise, I think we're going to face challenges around training and making sure that people retain these skills, which the machine is also capable of. And I think that's a really interesting challenge that's going to face.
Yeah, and I think like even in software development, we're talking about this all the time, and it's really interesting. We're in this sort of middle ground where the AI seem capable of doing enough work with enough confidence that you could definitely fall into a trap of atrophying everyone's skills and not training appropriately, and at the same time running into huge problems, right? We've seen this in different scenarios in different industries. There's famous cases like Klarna backtracking on them firing all their customer service representatives. There's lots of other cases as well. Duolingo doing a U-turn and saying they would get rid of human translators. There's all these examples already of the kind of overconfidence. But like you said, John, it can still help take off some of the burden. But you do need, the way I've heard it described, and I quite like this, is it's sort of like you're upgrading everyone's cars, but you need to be quite a capable driver to drive a Ferrari, right? Or even a fleet of Ferraris, which is almost what it's becoming. So even being able to orchestrate and analyse and understand and guide agents and AIs as they come online still requires deep understanding of the domain, and it's easy for everyone to sort of blow that off and think all that will be automated. We're just seeing it's so funny because, like, as I say, I don't really know anything about this world other than the little bit I've picked up from Haley, but it just sounds like there's an analogy with that training new software developers sort of strand, which is super interesting.
There absolutely is. The hope is that it will free up pathologists' time to be making, as it were, higher level decisions and solving higher level problems rather than the basic task of converting an image into a diagnosis or some observations. The problem is that part is a lot of right? So to some extent, we're asking people to stop doing what, for some people, is a very rewarding puzzle-solving type task. There are a number of challenges to overcome in making these tools really palatable for the profession as a whole, I think.
What I'm interested in is, obviously there's a clear need for what you guys are trying to build, and you know what you want to do. How do you go about building it then? So I would imagine you've got huge amounts of training data sets, medical images available that you're going to start building the AI to start learning everything about these samples that's going to support essentially what you guys do. What was that journey looking like from where you're at the moment and over the next couple of years as you get into your technologies implemented into with clinicians and surgeries, etc.?
Yeah, and it might be good as well to just cover what it is. Like, what does TileBio look like? How do you interact with it? How do you use it?
Yeah, sure. So I can start there. Yeah, so the idea for the technology that underpins TileBio has come out of Kei Yuan's lab, really, right? So it's this idea of converting medical images into documents through this self-supervised learning process. So I can talk a bit about that first, I guess. So yeah, it was kind of pioneered by Adalberto Claudio Quiros, which is a researcher in Kei's lab, and Kei, John David and I have been working on surrounding techniques from that since about 2-3 years ago now. So it's this process of first breaking these massive medical images, like I say, they're like Google Maps images, down into small tiles, right? So they become like jigsaw pieces almost. And what we do is use AI to discover a dictionary of recurrent tissue features, right? So we look for all the similar features using AI and group them together into clusters, basically, or groups of similar looking tiles. And each of those clusters gets assigned a word, and that becomes a word in our massive dictionary or visual kind of language of cancer or all pathology, actually. And from there, we can then use a large language model, our own one, proprietary one that we've built at Tile, to understand the context and relationship of all the different features within those pathology images. And this is really exciting because we're not then constrained by human knowledge, because we don't need labels to train either at the tile level or the slide level, the sample level. So this means we can uncover new information that humans don't know, and we can relate what the model's outputting to human understanding. So that's really exciting, because that means we can ingest massive medical image data sets and learn from them to teach us new things and build really powerful tools. So that's really the core of what Tile's doing. Like I say, we've actually went to the NHS and we're partnered with NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde through the West of Scotland Innovation Hub. I want to say a big thank you to Dr. Katrina Brooksbank from there. She's been a huge help in driving the project forward, as well as all the NHS staff that have been involved actually. But we're partnered with them, and they're giving us 2 million whole slide images, which will break down into 2 billion tiles for us to train this massive authoritative foundation model on, and hopefully uncover knowledge at a depth we've never seen before. So to date, we have trained a 10,000 slide prototype on publicly available images that's outperforming other competing models just through that spatial understanding and kind of AI-powered understanding. And we're currently in the process of training a 100,000 slide prototype on that NHS data. So we're partnered with Microsoft, who's deployed a trusted research environment in the NHS, so that we can securely access that patient data ethically as well, and without leaking any of that patient information. We know it's all anonymised and secure before we even access it. And from there, we're going to scale up to the 2 million slides that will power the core model that will drive all of our products. So yeah, in the end, we're going to have a number of different products. We'll look at biomarker discovery, so we can map the right patient to the right drug in a pharmaceutical setting. So that'll be almost like a kind of contract research where biotech and pharma companies will send us data, and we'll send back the novel discoveries. And then, like I say, the big goal is to get into healthcare, where we can, like you say, do clinical triage, and that'll be almost as a pre-read where every slide where it comes off the scanner will run through our system, and we'll flag back to their laboratory information system whether that slide's got cancer or not and where we think it is, and feed that information back to the pathologist. So yeah, that's the big long-term goal.
And when you're building that platform, right, there's a lot of deep. I've actually just pulled up your Nature paper that's linked on your slide, and it looks amazing. So great job on that. Looks brilliant. There's obviously tons of data science computing stuff going on, but John, maybe from your side, you and your kind of your other medical colleagues coming in, right? How did you all work together on that in terms of, was it around bringing that knowledge about what that language of pathology examples would and should look like? Was it actually data labeling? Was it validation of the outcomes? How did that sort of come together in a shared process?
So this was really the aha moment. Really, the remarkable part of the process was, so my computer science colleagues would take these large number of images, diagnostic, microscope, tissue, digitally scanned images, and ask the algorithm to discover these recurrent features with no input from me or any other expert whatsoever. And then they came to me with these clusters of images, which they said, the machine thinks these are similar. What do they look like to you? And that was a really fascinating and eye-opening experience, because the machine had, in a wholly unsupervised way, discovered the alphabet, the dictionary of this disease process. And that was really amazing to see the underlying structure of my diagnostic bread and butter exposed and brought out in that way is remarkably powerful. The task for me, and I recruited a team of other pathologists to join me on this, was to look at clusters of images and to describe them using expert language. And then those clusters become, attached to these very short text labels. They're starting to become established actually as permanent entities, as real parts of the pathological landscape. They represent ground truths and become entities which are worthy of study in their own right as a biologist, which is fascinating. And also, some of the clusters are kind of obvious in what we'd expect, the various different components of normal tissue and the various kind of classic appearances of a particular tumour type, for example. But then you see things that you've kind of seen many times before, but never thought to give a name or a label to. So they're starting to make discoveries which turn out to be biologically really powerful and indeed suggestive of new therapeutic approaches as well.
That's amazing. And for anyone who we'll share the paper and the notes and stuff, but when I was looking at the paper, like figure 9's super exciting to see. So you've got this kind of Spearman correlation analysis of different sort of pathologies and markers, etc. you've seen in the data. So you've got like multi-cancer, poor outcome, and linking that to everything, lymphocytes, T-cell numbers, leukocyte fractions, etc. It's just amazing to see that you're pulling that out, and you could do it at such a scale. Like, to your point, John, that's super exciting, right? Because then you're starting to get to this AI-driven diagnostics, like you say, at the pre-read level, and then you as experts can come in and tweak and calibrate. Did you ever see any weird or spurious kind of examples? So I'm thinking of things like when, Chris, you'll know about this one, but like everyone's making a big deal about convolutional neural networks and visual classification. But there was all these interesting examples of things like, classifying, I don't know, a tank and a dog as the same thing because they both had a blue sky in the background. Do you see anything weird like that coming out where you're saying it's learning the language, but sometimes it's really kind of coming up with the wrong sentences, if you like? Have you seen examples like that?
I can answer that, Chris.
Yeah, sure. You'll be better placed to answer that.
Any howlers?
I wouldn't say howlers, but there are certainly clusters which are defined by things which are less biological or less pathological. So it does an amazing job of pulling out. Pathologists love marking on slides with permanent markers, so it does a great job of pulling out marker pen. It does a great job, again, without us asking to, it does an amazing job of pulling out tiles which are out of focus. So again, without being trained to, it's spotting artifacts which can then be removed from subsequent analysis. And the same goes for bubbles and separation of cover slips and various technical artifacts it recognises automatically. But then it also does recognise things like edges of tissue. So it has a tendency to put tiles which contain a sharp edge of a biopsy or something together into one category, which isn't a howler, but it does mean that we have to be careful to ensure that we find other ways to make use of the information which could otherwise be lost by binning those into a less useful category.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And then one final one, and I'll shut up for a bit because I'm kind of dominating. Chris, you mentioned you sort of trained your own LLM, your own AI model. I know you obviously can't spill all the secret sauce, but what was the rationale for that? Was it driven mainly by security compliance, want to control all the data, etc., or was it some other sort of technical reason? What was the kind of rationale behind, we'll build our own, we won't take existing models and either fine tune or just do in context learning, things like that? What was the kind of thinking?
Yeah. So John, I'm sure will have comments on this as well, but they're just about to publish another paper on this, right? With the LLM side of things. So watch this space basically. But the rationale behind it is because it's an entirely different field, right? This is it's not visual, it's not natural language, it's tissue, right? So we're calling this a tissue language model, so that's why it's an entirely different domain. So you essentially can't transfer learn from natural language, right? You have to train your own to understand this entirely new field, basically.
The grammar's different, right?
Yeah, the grammar, syntax, if you want to think of it like that, right, is entirely different to natural language. But we're just using the same techniques that are so powerful to understand those contextual and spatial relationships, right? That's why we think that's why it's really powerful. But John, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and it's super exciting. I'm having a second aha moment where we've discovered meaningful recurrent morphological categories which I can describe in histopathological terms, and now we're discovering spatial motifs made up of those tokens which we can describe. So it's a second way atlasing the same tissue but with higher order features. So it's a bit like we started off by being able to recognise in aerial photos that's tarmac, that's grass, that's roof.
Yeah.
But now, in an unsupervised way, we're pulling out that's a market town.
Yeah.
That's a motorway. That's a sewage farm.
Yeah. And could this where would this kind of go next? Or maybe you don't know yet, but this sort of, I can just imagine there's lots of ways that could evolve, right? So you could probably have different AI models that are better at certain pathological motif detections. You could maybe have something that's good at the pathology side. You eventually branch out into some other medical vision problem, and they could collaborate together as tools for an agent or something. What's your view about how that might develop in terms of your model landscape, your model garden? How are you kind of thinking about that, or is it too early to tell, basically, because these models you're building are actually so good at what they do?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Andy. So we have thought about that a little bit, right? But it's like once we train the core foundation model, it'll actually be really powerful for a number of tasks. And it's quite an exploratory process as well, because it's the first of this new class of tissue language models. So how powerful it can really be, we actually don't yet know. But just like you hinted at there, we can make agents for a variety of tasks, right? We can do biomarker discovery, we can do survival prediction, clinical triage. So having that spatial understanding that no one else does is going to unlock, a huge amount of potential that we've literally yet to explore. But yeah, all I can say is it's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to see what happens in the future.
Because there's all these models that there was stuff trying to do not similar, but other similar sounding ideas, at least in sort of the genetic space, looking at the language of genes, etc., and sort of saying, build LLMs speaking the language of DNA almost. So it's like you can imagine if you have something like what you've got and something like what they've got, and some overarching system that's able to look at those complementary aspects. So it takes us, pathology suggests this, I'm now looking at a DNA sample and that also suggests this, therefore there's an overlap, therefore chance of X diagnosis. There's all these amazing opportunities. It's such an exciting area. So thank you for making such good progress. That's amazing.
Yeah.
There's very exciting ideas, and we're very fortunate to be very well placed to tackle those. We've got massive multimodal data sets where we can do exactly that. So in multiple disease types, we can link image to DNA or RNA sequence, and that happens to be an area of research focus for K1, our co-founder, as well. So those are absolutely on our menu.
Going to the kind of business side, you've obviously got some funding recently. Where does that take you to in terms of expediting the research and building the platform? Obviously you talked about increasing the amount of tiles that you're analysing at the moment. What's the timelines now for the product to be integrated into clinical triage, etc.?
Absolutely. So yeah, we're just in the process of completing our £2 million seed round. Hopefully it should be done by the time this episode airs. But yeah, that'll unlock about 24 months of runway for us, and it's going to be a really critical time. Because like I say, right now we're scaling to a 100,000 slide model, but that 24 months will cover us scaling to the 2 million slide model, right? So that's going to be a jump in performance and jump in our ability to do a whole variety of tasks. But our core focus to begin with is going to be in biomarker discovery and drug development. The reason for that is, well, one, our model's really good at that, right? It's kind of core power is that it can learn without human labels and actually teach us new things. So it's really primed for that space, right, where you can uncover lots of novel histological features and try and uncover why a patient responded to a drug or didn't, or try and match the right drug to the right patient. But the great thing about that as well is because it's a research area, we can use it as a research use only tool, so we don't need regulatory approval for that. So that means we can do that right away. So that's really exciting that we can start to generate revenue from that, prove our value in that space. But in parallel, we plan to start seeking regulatory approval. So we're right from the get-go, we're going to ensure we meet the regulatory standards like ISO 13485, to ensure we've got the quality assurance pipeline and version control and everything else in place we need to get regulatory approval so we can move into the clinic as quickly as possible, basically. So that's our, like I say, big long-term goal is to get into the clinic and do that clinical triage. But yeah, to begin with, biomarker discovery in the pharmaceutical and biotech space, and aiming to move into the clinic within about 2 to 3 years.
Excellent. And in terms of obviously, as the more kind of work you've got that comes with the capacity of trying to scale an operation at that kind of volume, what does that look like? Are you looking at building a kind of homegrown team of AI professionals, software engineers alongside medical professionals? What's your kind of plan for growth?
Yeah. Exactly that's it in a nutshell. So there's the 4 of us to begin with, right? So like I say, we've got a good split between technical and medical, which is great to kind of lead the team. But we're going to be hiring at least 5 to 6 people to begin with. It'll be 2 AI engineers, right, to, like I say, help me scale the platform. 1 business development expert, right, so that we can start making those connections and setting up the right relationships. An exclusive person dedicated to data management, because there's going to be a torrential, torrent of data coming in that we need to ensure we manage in the right way and archive and put into the right formats. And 1 analyst that's going to be doing those biomarker discovery trials and actually analysing the model out. But in parallel with that, we want to start hiring people to build a platform, right? So, like I say, the great aspect of our model is the fact that it can teach us new things. So we want to put that in the hands of pharmaceutical companies, biotech companies. So in parallel, we're going to be developing our own, TileBio platform where they can upload images and start to do that sort of analysis and get those results themselves. So that's all going to be happening in parallel, basically.
Amazing. And do you share that kind of responsibility? Are you seeking external support from a business side to help you scale with all the different problems that you face? What's the kind of plan for that?
Yeah. So no, we're absolutely going to be seeking external support. Just yesterday I was having conversations with regulatory experts, right, to make sure we're doing the right things at the right time. And similarly, Kay and I are AI experts, but have no expert with cloud architecture, for example. So we've actually been working with Microsoft a lot, and can't thank them enough. We've been talking with Alan Weaver, their global black belt in AI, and lots of their other experts, to help us make sure we've got the right technology in place to take advantage of their and other cloud architectures. So yeah, we'll definitely be seeking lots of external support.
External support. And there's a really good Scottish tech ecosystem with like innovation labs and accelerator programs, and you said a spin out of the university as well. Do you get a lot of support through the university also?
Yeah, that's absolutely. So yeah, we're spinning out from the University of Glasgow, and we've been working with their tech transfer office for over a year now, right? And they've been giving us lots of support, and more importantly, making lots of introductions to the right people, including experts for who we need to know and who we need to speak to. Yeah, so they've been fantastic.
It's a real good news story for the Scottish ecosystem. Again, we've had a few kind of really great startups on, but this is really, really exciting. And John, just a question to you, kind of on the whole, it was exciting what you said, Chris, about this could be a research tool first, and that helps accelerate you. That's great. But to the point before about people's pathologists' appetite for this sort of change and stuff, what do you think is going to be really important to convince people who are the experts in your domain that, you know, this is to help and aid, not replace? What do you think is going to be key in that messaging? Do you think there'll be anything really important to try and get right as you do that, kind of push out and roll out to that community?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the immediate traction, well, particularly from where I'm sitting, right? My lab is within Cancer Research UK Scotland Institute in Glasgow. And the most excitement in my local microenvironment is from academics who want to use this technology as a way to quantify their experiments or what's happening in human tissues. So I think it will gain academic acceptance and utility immediately. It already is and has. I think that the second way in is going to be as companion diagnostics for pharma. So pharma in cancer medicine, really pharma have led the way in driving acceptance of technology, right? It was the needs of precision medicine that got DNA sequencing into the clinic, and I am sure that will be the same for a lot of the AI pathology that we're talking about. However, the triage type tool as well will be happening in parallel, I think.
Yeah.
But we're really going to have to kind of make that happen because it won't have that pharma express train behind it, even though I think it's just as important. And engaging with the pathology community is going to be incredibly important. So engaging with trainee pathologists as they come up, and they need early exposure to this area and the direction that it's going in. And there's something of a charm offensive
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we always call it like community building, taking people on the journey. There's all these things, you know, even in a large enterprise like I work in, you have to do, and Chris knows this better than anyone as well, you just have to do all this selling but not selling, if I put it that way. You're trying to show people the benefits of this amazing technology and how it will help them. You're not trying to shove it down their throats, sort of thing.
No,
That's what I was going to ask, like in terms of how much of the design thinking and the user-friendly aspect of the actual pathologist using the software that comes into the equation, or is that further down the line when you think this is going to be implemented? We need to get that right at that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. How much are you thinking about or worried about the UX, if you like?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I know something we're worried about now, right? Like, because we know we have to build that in to what we design in the future. So just to the point about how, you know, the kind of pathologists accept the tool and it gets adopted as well, I feel like there is a change underway. A third of the labs are already digital, right? And we've seen a number of tools be adopted in the NHS, like the recent prostate cancer detection tool. And there's a really great trial being run at NHS Grampian called Radical, where as lung cancer x-rays roll off the scanner, they're being triaged in radiology, not pathology, but radiology, right? And they're looking for lung cancer to the pathologist, right? So for us, I think like our initial kind of baby step into the clinic won't even be as our own dedicated UI or UX, right? It will be just a pre-read where we integrate with their existing system, and we just, you know, it's like a color code, red or green, that'll be assigned to the slide to say this slide has cancer. Yeah, and then that'll help prioritize and flag up those patients that need it. So it'll be like a small incremental steps, and as we design, we'll ensure that we take the needs of pathologists into account, basically, and make sure we operate with lots of feedback to just make sure we make something of value.
So yeah, you might never need a UI.
Yeah, exactly.
You can become the smart service behind existing services, which
that's the plan to start. Yeah.
Which is a very scalable business model, right? Okay, that's good to hear.
So although you might like massively increase the speed of diagnosis, really that workflow you're not really in control of. So for instance, if there's a sample, then you can be detected within a day that there's maybe cancer in that sell. Essentially, though, it's up to the NHS and their kind of workflow of how they get that out to the patient and let them know. So, yeah, as much as the product can be brilliant, it's kind of out your hands at that point. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, it's just like any tool, right? It's part of a lab and part of a massive ecosystem, right? It's about how it's used. But yeah, I think it'll be another kind of feather in the cap of those pathologists to make sure they get through the processes, quickly.
As quickly as possible.
As quickly as possible, and reducing the burden on them, right, is what we hope.
How much of a race is it in terms of to develop the technology? Obviously, I think you'd mentioned that there's similar tech in other spaces like radiology and stuff like that. Is that something that is more of a business problem that you have to face, or do you look at that from a different angle?
Yeah, no, we're taking that into consideration as well. So there's a few other companies out there developing foundation models. So where we're different is they still need labels at the slide level, right? So they train on unsupervised weight at tile level, like finding the features.
Yeah.
But how they re-aggregate all that information at the sample level or the patient level, if you want to think of it like that, is where we're really different. So they need, some of our competitors need 500 pathologists to generate 5 million annotations, right, to train their models, whereas we can just dump all the raw data in and train a massive model and then look at the output and assign meaning to it.
Wow.
So we can move much more quickly, only really limited by the amount of compute we can access, right, rather than the kind of human annotation power. So yeah, we need to move quickly, though we know that there's other smart people out there doing fantastic things as well. So we're aware that it definitely is a race to get there. But the good thing for us, is that it's a massive field. And there's lots of areas where help's needed. I feel like there's lots of things we can do.
I mean, if you could help Scotland win the World Cup and the AI medal in here, that would be excellent.
That would be fantastic.
Because he knows the truth. He knows the truth. I think that's fantastic to hear. It's fantastic. You're in the race, right? And you're making such great progress. And I think just looking at the materials on your website, the paper, everything you've got, just makes it clear that you are kind of a real strong contender in this race. So that's just fantastic to see.
Thank you.
And yeah, 100%, just to echo what Andy said. I was blown away by our initial conversation, thought we need to get the guys onto the podcast. So yeah, it's super interesting, especially homegrown product and business. But that was what I was going to say to you. Obviously, once you get kind of first couple of phases under your belt, what's the kind of future plan? And internationally, obviously, we spoke to a lot of health tech or med tech companies locally, and they've always got big plans for like US market expansion and stuff. Where do you see it going? Yeah,
no, that's absolutely a good point. So the great thing about the kind of the pharma and biotech market is it's going to be global right away to begin with, right? So we won't be constrained by region with that, which is great. But yeah, in the diagnostics and clinical space, we'll launch in Scotland and then expand to the rest of the UK and then we'll quickly move to the US because it's like one of the largest markets. But yeah, we're also looking to Europe and globally. Because one of the things we love about this technology is it can almost access to good quality diagnostics as well, we hope, in the future.
Yeah.
If we can build on top of this technology and produce great diagnostics and clinical agents, it can be accessible from anywhere in the world, right, if you have an internet connection and a slide scanner. So yeah, there's lots of kind of exciting opportunities down the line, we hope.
Excellent. No, as I say, guys, it was absolutely brilliant to have you on. Andy, is there anything that you'd want to ask before we kind of finish up?
I'm going to keep stream because I feel like I could probe the guys for hours. This is all absolutely fascinating. This is one of the most interesting, exciting things I've heard that's sort of happening in the ecosystem up here. I think it's fantastic work. Keep doing it. It's such a good area, such a beneficial area, kind of net for good thing, amazing technology. It's got all the ingredients of just an amazing success stories. Best of luck to you, and I hope you absolutely smash out of the park.
We'll need to diarise. We've never rebooked a follow-up to the podcast back in, but we'll maybe catch up with you in 12 months' time and see how you're getting on.
Yeah, we'd love that. No, thank you, Andy, and thank you, Chris, for having us on. I'd love to come back. Definitely. Great.
Cheers.
John would too.
Brilliant, John. Cheers.